Hello and welcome. You're watching the India Today Conclave South, and now through the power of technology, hologram and teleportation, I want to welcome in Chennai at the India Today Conclave South, the Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, somebody who has a very close association with the state and is speaking not just in her capacity as the person in charge of our lives financially, but also a political leader interested in expanding her party's presence in the southern states. Nirmala Sitharaman ji, welcome to the India Today South Conclave.
Namaskar Rahul, Vanakkam.
Nirmala ji, at the outset I want to start by asking you about what's at stake according to you for the BJP in these 5 assembly elections, particularly in Tamil Nadu, Puducherry and Kerala. You know, you're one of the most prominent faces of the BJP in the south. How do you see this election in terms of the BJP's desire to spread its wings beyond the west, the north and the east, where you've penetrated deeply but somehow you haven't been able to breach the southern frontier?
Thank you Rahul for having me over, and I'm very grateful for the audience for this interaction today. I'm starting to answer your question by talking about our prospects in the south. So, our alliance will form the government in Puducherry, it will form the government in Tamil Nadu, and will perform well in Kerala. As regards Bengal and Assam we are coming back, and in Bengal our performance will be brilliant. I would probably tell you within a week or a bit later that we are indeed forming the government in Bengal too.
Why is it that the south so far has been the one frontier which the BJP hasn't been able to capture, especially Tamil Nadu, where a lot of the politics has been anti-Hindi, anti-Hindutva as it were, and opposed to a lot of the ideas around which your party is structured? And to what extent do you think, Ms. Sitharaman, you've been able to breach those barriers in the minds of the voters of Tamil Nadu?
Well, I think Tamil Nadu has a lot of specific and unique points which has built a narrative in favor of certain regional identity. Whether that is right or wrong, I am not getting into that. And vested interest groups have always tried projecting BJP as a party of the north, a party of upper caste, and a party where Tamil Nadu has no respect. I think because of the way in which BJP, particularly since the time of Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, when the alliance partners were from one of the Dravidian parties, and subsequently in 2014 under the Prime Minister's leadership, Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji's leadership, you find that Tamil Nadu has been duly attended to, and every such myth has been, because of the performance of BJP, absolutely shattered. Every such myth. It's a north-centric party. No, of course, even without one MP, we've done everything that within 5 years we could do for Tamil Nadu, and more can be done also, and even now we are doing a lot more. That whole angst about Tamil will be ignored as a language has been attended to prove that probably Prime Minister Modi has taken Tamil everywhere in the world with a sense of pride and happiness that even during the DMK's rule, you wouldn't have heard parties taking it that far. And above all, the cultural identity of Tamil Nadu. It has been repeatedly proven that it is because of Prime Minister Modi that in Tamil Nadu, the BJP has stood steady for the culture of Tamil Nadu and exposed those who are only doing lip service. So I think all this has helped for people to realize that the fake narrative which was going against BJP is no longer valid, and therefore the credibility of the thought that BJP is a party which is showing every attention to Tamil Nadu has gained a lot of traction.
In your view, Finance Minister, what is it that the Bharatiya Janata Party offers to the voters of Tamil Nadu? The battle here over several decades has been a fight between the DMK on the one side and its offshoot, the AIDMK on the other. In this very regional mix of very strong identity based parties, what is it that the BJP, which is largely seen as a northern party or a Hindi party of the native Hindi speakers, offer to a state where the Tamil identity is as strong as it is in Tamil Nadu?
You know, that question is definitely already severally answered. Between 2014 and 19, even with just one MP from Tamil Nadu, I can list out the number of things which have happened because of the central government's initiative in Tamil Nadu. Even now as we speak, more than about 3 lakh crore worth of projects are literally in the process of getting done and completed. And the way in which several well thought out schemes have come in for Tamil Nadu, whether it is the defense corridor, whether for the first time I repeat, the pride of Tamil Nadu, which is the Grand Anakat, which we call in Tamil Kallana, which is dated from Sangamira, and from that Sangamira, that dam has withstood every test of time and has been the nerve center for all the Kaveri belt, which is known as the grain belt or the bowl. And for the renovation and the upkeep and maintenance, separate over 2,000 crores have been allocated, and this has never happened before. And that's done by the so-called North Indian party BJP. I would challenge on every score, whether it's the development of metro, whether it is the development of Vavu Chidambaranar port, whether it is port in Chennai which gets more money, new harbour to be built, every aspect of Tamil Nadu has been attended to, and as an industrial state, it's received every attention that an industrial state should get from Modi government between 2014-19 and even now. And therefore, Tamil Nadu should understand that this narrative no longer sells. But for a minute, I would want Rahul to draw your attention to the combination of DMK and Congress, both dynastic parties, and the pretension that DMK is no longer dynastic has been shattered. That pretension no longer holds good, with the son of the current president of DMK is also getting a ticket and it's coming up, just as the Congress is. It's always the family, it's always their progeny who gets the leadership role, whereas BJP is not any such a party. One, on the dynasty point. Two, on the point of caste and caste driven, I challenge the DMK. Have they, and I challenge the Congress in Tamil Nadu, where they repeatedly say this is an upper caste party, the BJP. I want to highlight and ask them, have they ever appointed anybody from the scheduled caste as their, or BC or OBC as you say in the north, as their leader? Whereas BJP is a party where, look at the various states where we are in power. OBCs, BCs, SCs have all got their role, and they have become chief ministers, they have become state level party presidents. So dynasty, caste, and take the third point. These two parties are together and they want to talk about a secular party alliance. On the one hand, one is an atheist party, the DMK. Today, look at their manifesto. They are announcing 25,000 rupees for 1 lakh pilgrims who will go to temples. DMK talking of temples? You look at what can be done for the sake of votes. You have been running Tamil Nadu saying atheism is the best. Anyone who goes to temple has got to be treated this way, that way. What in Tamil they say, Mooda Nambike, enna Mooda Nambike, Kovilukku poitrukanga. That was the Tamil Nadu DMK. Today, you want 1,000 crores to be given in your manifesto for temple preservation. You want to give 25,000 for about 1 lakh pilgrims who will go to Hindu temples? The magic of vote, Rahul, can turn a party which has spit all through against Hindus, against believers. Today they want to ask vote in the name of religion, but they call us a North Indian party, a party of Hindutva. We don't practice any such a thing. We respect all religions and we don't believe in appeasement. And what is the other party? The Congress, which is in alliance with them. They are in alliance with Congress in one place. They are not in, Congress is in alliance with Muslim League and the Communist in one place. And in some other state, they fight against them. Look at the hypocrisy of the partners. And two hypocrite partners have come together. They think they want to fool the Tamil public. I honestly want to appeal to public of Tamil Nadu, people of Tamil Nadu, who are very cultured people. They value their culture, their language. Look at the way we are being told things suddenly, which is very different from what was earlier heard from a party which never cared for Tamil culture. This was the party. I'll remind the audience, the learned audience who are before me. Who brought Jallikattu out of Tamil Nadu's culture? How did Jallikattu get to being violence against animals? So, no, don't practice Jallikattu. It was the DMK when it was in power. They don't talk about it now. And who got it back for Tamil Nadu? Prime Minister Modi. So, please, that one example is enough to say what a hypocrisy has been governing DMK and the Congress party. It was the Congress party's Animal Welfare Board list which put all the Jallikattu bulls into animals which have to be protected. So, a long answer for your question, Rahul, but that is the hypocrisy which we will have to call out.
Ma'am, you spoke of the industrialization of Tamil Nadu. A state which used to be at the forefront of attracting investment is now losing out to rivals like Maharashtra, Gujarat, to some extent Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka. What is your party's roadmap for industrialization? Where do you think previous governments have fallen short? If you had an opportunity this time along with the AIADMK to form a government in Tamil Nadu, how would you go about the task of industrializing this state which is already more industrialized than the national average?
Yes, Tamil Nadu has always had this culture of being driven towards and driven by entrepreneurs. It has a great culture of wanting to do their own business and also becoming industry leaders, small, big, medium and so on. In between, of course, there has been a bit of a less of speed, if I may say so. I can even point a few reasons for it. Probably it was the illness of former Chief Minister, Madam Jayalalitha, and during that time there was a bit of a, less of a direction and leadership, but which has been probably more than enough made up in the last 1 or 1.5 years. Now there is a lot of momentum for industry back again in Tamil Nadu, and I am very happy for that. That momentum should not be lost. So already the laying of the defense corridor, bringing in more investment, for instance, navally, that thermal unit which used to depend on lignite. Today, Prime Minister Modi has given 1,000 megawatt additional capacity to be brought in, and also to use that space for solar energy. So, that is one thing. Second, we have also stretched a lot of corridors, and also the Salem, Chennai, Bengaluru, Chennai, the corridors and the roads which are being, national highways which are being built. I think all this will lay a lot of emphasis, and also the point that many of the units under defense acquisition, where there is a policy drive for procuring many of the India manufactured under Atmanirbhar Bharat, India manufactured components for defense are all majorly being produced in that belt between Hosur, Coimbatore, Tiruchi and Chennai. Now all of them will be honestly benefiting from that defense procurement policy, which I am happy is actually actively being promoted. So, there is enough and more reason to understand why Tamil Nadu's industry. So, Rahul, your question as to whether we have a plan, we have shown the plan and we will continue to work on the plan even as we go looking forward.
Ma'am, how do you respond to the criticism that it is the central government and the BJP that has been pulling the strings behind the scenes in the local politics of Tamil Nadu, because that's something that the locals here have a lot of opposition to. This was said, for example, in the case of Sasikala stepping away, not being actively present in this election. There is this sense that the DMK tries to convey that behind the scenes, it is the Bharatiya Janata Party that has turned the OPS EPS combine into an extension of their party, and they are getting them to dance to the BJP's tunes. How do you respond to this perception?
It's very amusing, Rahul. A state party which has been elected to power, of course, unfortunately lost its prime leader, and then the party's other leaders have taken up the party and they are running the government. A party which is DMK, which was completely bounded by the UPA's coalition dharma, worked only to improve its own through the 2G and very many other scams, and they did not bother about the state. Now they have the cheek, if I may use that word, to say no, BJP is running. Is Tamil Nadu getting its due or not? Is Tamil Nadu's industry being attended to or not? Is Tamil Nadu's roads, national highways, ports being built or not? Are Tamil Nadu's industries getting the attention under the PLI or not? Are more industries being sent and also being received in Tamil Nadu or not? Do you want to talk about these? Or are you interested in only metaphorically saying, oh, this one is being guided by them, there is a puppet here? What a shame to talk about an elected government in this language. Were they a puppet in the UPA dispensation between 2006 and 11, when there was outrageous lawlessness, Gunda Raj, when there's absolutely violence everywhere, power cuts for 12 hours? Were they the puppets doing what the UPA wanted, or did they do it themselves? Either way, that phase of DMK rule in Tamil Nadu is nothing to crow about. So, if you think if all these benefits which are happening in Tamil Nadu now is happening because the BJP is pulling the strings, is it happen? I don't say we are pulling the strings, but look at what public good is happening with that government there. Whereas in your period, it was lawlessness. You assume you were very independent of the UPA government in Delhi. What did you achieve by even being independent, except for spreading corruption? So, these kind of a lame, dramatic, picturization is only to cover up their total failure.
Ma'am, in this election, one of the issues the opposition is chasing you with and is pinching the people, not just in Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Puducherry, but also in Bengal, Assam and nationally, Delhi, Mumbai, everywhere, is the issue of rising fuel prices. Now, over the last few days, prices haven't gone up, presumably because the companies are under pressure that not to increase prices during an election season. But how do you view the fact that Brent crude prices are going up, OPEC is cutting production, India is one of the world's largest importers of crude oil, is feeling the pressure, and it's now reaching a point where people are having to pay, it's like petrol's hitting a century, diesel is on its way to hitting a century. How long will this go on for? How do you view your challenges? Do you have any good news or relief that you can offer to people who are listening to you here?
Rahul, you know very well, good or any news I am not expected to say during model code of conduct. And in any case, I have spoken about this oil issue and I have very clearly said now it is a stage where we have to talk about it both center and state. And why do I say that? It's all right, very well to say, oh, center collects more than the states. Even if you assume for a minute that that is true, everything that the center collects and you know very well, at least 42% of that goes to the states themselves. So, I may collect 100 rupees, still 42 goes to the states even from that. So, to point out saying center collects more, state collect less, eventually work has to happen at the state level, whether it is the fuel cess or anything else, or the excise that I collect under the GST, also the GST tax that I collect, everything gets a 42% devolution to the states. So, this moral thing of center collects more, so it has to cut more or it has to cut first, all that should be not a considered debate. However, the issue is something where I think all in a federal structure will have to think how best we can handle it. It is a commodity which comes completely imported. We do not have oil in this country. So, we are one of the world's biggest consumers of this imported product. We will have to have a very considered and well thought out debate, both center and state, because end of the day consumers should get some respite.
No, but do you have an active timeline on how to achieve this, Ms. Sitharaman? Because why I am pressing it is because people are feeling the pinch where it is reaching a point where it is becoming very difficult for families to manage, and therefore, while directionally you are saying you want to find relief, can you give us some kind of a roadmap about how soon this will happen? Also on the issue of taking petroleum products into the GST, how much of a concerted effort is being made to try and make it happen? Do you see it happen? How soon and when do you see fuel prices actually come down? Because people feel, is the government taxing the middle class too much? Is the government taking middle class India that has been such a big votary of the BJP and fans of the Prime Minister for granted?
No, Rahul, I want to very clearly put before you, on the middle class, the government taking it for a ride, all that is not right. Now, you are a very senior journalist. I do not want you also to repeat, oh, the middle class. It is a spectrum. What constitutes a middle class is a spectrum. So, I can keep telling you on this strand what have I done, on that strand what have I done, still you will tell me, no, the middle class is not being attended to. I remember, and this one example I will give before going further. I remember in between July and December, a lot of people kept saying, many of the housing projects have been left without completion. People who had taken home loans are all sitting and paying the EMIs and also paying rent, but the possession of their flats have not come into their hands, and therefore they said, what is the government doing about it? I am happy to say that we launched a single window system through which the projects, incomplete projects, which are RERA approved projects, were all taken up, and one by one we have been giving them support. And today, I know I am talking at a time when election is on, today many of these projects have been completed and the middle class are getting possession of the flats for which some of them have been waiting for 8 years, 5 years, 4 years and so on. So, that is one of the things I want to highlight, but of course, beyond this I may not be able to say, then they will say, oh, you are talking during model code of conduct. But again, on the issue of GST taking up petroleum issues, I will have to go to the council, and then the council will have to deliberate, and only then can we take a call.
Now, the union budget that you presented recently came in for much appreciation, and one of the reasons why there was so little criticism and so much appreciation is that it signaled the government's desire to turn rightwards when it comes to economics. The desire to sell government owned companies, actually use the word privatization, not shy away from biting the bullet. Now, many people would have thought that this is what Prime Minister Modi would do when he came to power in 2014. It's taken about 6 years to get there. So, explain why you think it's taken so much time. How serious is the government in pushing through? Because, for example, on the farm laws which your government introduced, there's been a big political backlash, and presumably when you try and disinvest some of the government concerns which are now listed for privatization, there will be a backlash then as well. How committed are you to taking the political backlash but doing what is in the long term national interest?
First of all, moving right, moving left, I am not going to get into that categorization. What we have done and what has been steadily done between 14 and 19 and continued even now is to convey this message that we trust Indian citizens, we trust our business, we have faith in them, and therefore we want to give them maximum opportunities. And if opportunity means that ease of doing business will have to be undertaken, laws will have to be primed, and many of the laws which were outdated will have to be removed, and further looking at how the states can also take that agenda forward. All this happened between 2014 and 19. Now come 19, we have now set up ourselves with a policy which says government's presence in the form of some public sector enterprises will be there in some core sectors alone, and even there we will only be bare minimum in our presence. And in these areas, in the core areas, and also in every other area, private sector will be absolutely welcome, and they will be playing their full role, for which the government will be a facilitator rather than a strict regulator. That's exactly what we have said. Now, having done the earlier steps which are necessary to reach this level, so there was never a dilution in our belief or approach that Indian entrepreneurs will have to be trusted, our faith will have to be in them. There is no way in which the government can look down on them or to be policing them. That system of thought has been consistent with our ideology, and that ideology has started from Jan Sangh and continues till today, which is completely indigenous. It is not a product of some theory which has been imported from some destination. Today, even those destinations have changed their views, but some parties are still sitting with it. We are not that. From the beginning, we believed in India's strength, we believed in Indian citizens, and that's exactly what this policy says.
Now, one of your challenges is to attract foreign investment, and you've been saying that you want to do away with tax terrorism, harassment, and that you want to make India as attractive an investment destination as possible. And in that milieu, we've also seen the government announce it wants to challenge international arbitration, which went in favor of some international companies like Kane Energy, Vodafone, and you want to challenge what was thought by many economists as a bad idea in the first place. Can you explain your government's thinking on this issue? Why are you not willing to accept international arbitration and say, okay, this is essentially something which does us more harm than good, because global MNCs look at what's happening, they worry about the continuity of policy, the tenability of contracts, and whether or not they should come and invest in India. Can things change? Is this pushback doing us more harm than good in an international context, Finance Minister?
First of all, Rahul, I think you should de-link these cases and the flow of investment into India. These cases are on, we are talking about them, no doubt. But that's not had a negative impact on FDI flows into the country. Otherwise, we have now touched some historic highs in terms of the FDI inflows. So, first of all, let's detach that from this case that we are talking about, one or two cases that we are talking about. I know Kane had sent some of their top representatives to talk with our finance secretary, and the talks have been held, probably 2 or 3 rounds were held, and they've gone back saying they'll probably talk to their board, and the board, after that they'll come back to us. Because we had also highlighted how if they choose to come back, they should let us know, and so on. However, even with that said, one point I want to draw your attention, and attention of the audience also, many of whom probably are from industry. The sovereign right of any country to tax cannot be questioned. Some of the arbitration awards in also dealing with that specific and limited question of that particular tax of retrospective application post the clarificatory amendment of 2012 have also commented on India's sovereign right to tax. We want to be sure that no arbitration body can ever question the sovereign right of India to tax. And from 2014, why even before that, when we were in opposition, we have taken this position that retrospective taxation is not something which we believe in. We will not use it. We will never apply any taxation in retrospect, and therefore we have made our position as regards retrospective application of tax, that we are not in its favor. We will not do it. But yet there are a calibrated thought process which we have taken up, because the question of sovereign authority of India to tax cannot be commented or made a part of the verdict. And if it is made as a part of a verdict, I have to obviously appeal and question that. But as regards Kane, we are waiting for their reply post the negotiations or talks which were held with the Finance Secretary. I am yet to hear from them.
We've heard from the Finance Ministry, we've heard from the Reserve Bank of India on their views on cryptocurrencies and having a law which allows for global acceptance of global cryptocurrencies, or an Indian version of a cryptocurrency. How do you personally, as Finance Minister, view this debate? Do you think we're heading into a zone where it's almost inevitable that governments will have to come around to the realization that cryptocurrencies are here to stay? How do you view this outside of what we've already heard from the RBI? How's the Finance Minister viewing this entire debate around cryptocurrencies?
A cabinet note is getting prepared. It's almost nearing completion, and then it will be taken to the cabinet, of course. And I have said my view on this, saying the Supreme Court had commented on this cryptocurrency, whilst we are very clear that the Reserve Bank may take a call on an official cryptocurrency or anything of that kind, but from our side, we are very clear that we are not shutting all options off. We will allow a certain amount of a window for people to use, so that experiments in the blockchain, the Bitcoin, or whatever you may want to call it, the cryptocurrency experiments and Fintech which depend on such experiments will have that window available for them. We are not going to shut it off all. But yet what kind of a formulation, even for a crypto, will have to be the content of the cabinet note, which will get ready soon.
How excited are you about the prospects of blockchain technology and its application in reimagining how we govern India, and how, for example, land records are taken care of, financial records are maintained? How excited are you about the application of blockchain, and how much are you pushing it? How do you see that play out?
It's a big area, and I think India has a lead advantage. A lot of Indian fintech companies have already made a lot of progress in it. We've had several presentations given to us. Many works are already at the state levels, in some states happening, and we want to take it up in a big way in IFSC too, the GIFT City in Gandhinagar too. We have given a lot of opportunities for such fintech companies to come and essentially be present there and take it up there. We are also planning to have a startup meet essentially on fintech in Gandhinagar, in the GIFT City. Once the parliament is over, I'll probably spend more time planning and executing that. We are absolutely on the track for it. So I don't want to keep saying I'm doing this or that, but on fintech, on blockchain, there's a lot of work going on in India, and we will certainly encourage them.
The military hostility between India and China has impacted the economic relations between our two countries. China was increasingly becoming one of the key sources of foreign investment into some of our young startups. Now there have been reports that because the armies have pulled back from the northern and southern banks of Pangong, that the government is re-evaluating Chinese investments into India. A lot of the projects for which approvals had been sought are now being looked at closely. Do you think a military thaw and de-escalation will clear the doors for Chinese investments, or do you still view Chinese investments with a lot of suspicion?
Well, I don't think we did anything to say this Chinese, that Chinese, or only because it's Chinese. None of that. There was a clear policy worked out about investments from neighboring countries or with land border countries, and on that a lot of established protocols were in place, and that is the one which is in operation even today. It was so earlier meaning between 2019, late 19 and 20, and it continues. So, we look at it only from that point of view. We have not picked up on any one country and said no, not this country but some other country. We have not taken a country based approach.
One of the biggest decisions your government needs to make, and a decision which will impact millions of lives across the country, is the decision about the 5G tech backbone. How do you view the question about whether India should allow for Huawei and the other Chinese companies like ZTE to be involved in the 5G technology backbone, which will be in place for the next several years? Or do you think because of what happened at the Galwan Valley, because of the military conflict between India and China, we should just stay away from the Chinese? There were reports recently in the US that Chinese companies were trying to infiltrate into India's power grid. So can you trust companies linked very closely to the Chinese government with having a role to play in our 5G backbone?
Rahul, I think these are matters which are being looked into in great depth by the concerned ministries, MeitY and law and so on. So, I wouldn't want to give a very sweeping one line observation saying, oh, it should be this way or that way. I think these are matters of serious strategic interest for India, and we should allow the concerned group of people who are giving it all the attention to take a call on it. It might be easy for me to just give an off the cuff remark, but it can have serious ramification either way. So, I would rather not comment on this issue just out here and wait for the concerned group of ministers and departments to take a call.
One of your big thrust areas has been to offer production linked incentives or PLIs in key sectors of the economy in a bid to encourage manufacturing to move to India, move away from China and other countries, and actually make India a prime global investment destination. How do you compare your notion when you introduced this idea with how it's been received world over? Are you seeing huge excitement? Do you think this can be a game changer? This can actually help achieve the idea of an Atmanirbhar Bharat? Or do you think, while there's a lot of buzz, how much of it will translate into actual investment on the ground?
No, actually I think it is already showing clear translation into the ground. There's just a lot of fallout. You can see events taking place on the ground. A lot of industry have come enthusiastically and set up production. Some of them have commenced and some lots have already gone for exports. So, the PLI scheme, I am glad to say, is one of those schemes of Government of India which has shown quick, immediate and complete result and the result is there for everybody to see. So, this is one of those very well tailored schemes because consultations at every different level was taken up. As a result, the scheme itself has been so useful that industries have come forward, to the extent that many other industries which are not covered under the PIL are now saying we are also planning to shift from so and so area, from a different geography, and wanting to now come to India, they ask for PLI. So, PLI I would think is one of those very successful schemes of the Government of India, not just at all in the paper, but on paper and on ground. So, I think it is a very good example of how when the industry and government work together, they can actually come up with something which is going to make big difference in the ground.
Do you believe, Finance Minister, that India is still on track to be a $5 trillion economy by 2024-25, which is what Prime Minister Modi had declared publicly? Or would you concede that because of COVID, because of the pandemic, because we went into a recession for 2 quarters, that target of a $5 trillion economy over the next 5 years now looks very difficult to achieve?
I don't think it's difficult to achieve. In fact, now I would say with the present budget, which is still in the parliament, the finance bill is still in the parliament, I think we've set a clear landscape for the next 10-15 years. And in the 10-15 years, this 5 trillion economy is only one of the objectives which will anyway be achieved in the time span which has been earlier mentioned. But the budget that is presented on 1st February is something which is beyond the 5 trillion. We will achieve that. But this budget takes it even further. The landscape for the next 15 years for India, 20 years for India is already clearly laid. A consistent picture, policy driven picture is given, and I am sure 5 trillion and more will be achieved.
Finance Minister, as we come to the end of this conversation, I wonder how life has changed for you between the time when you were Defence Minister in the last government to Finance Minister now. You've lived through one of the worst periods of economic turmoil since the Great Depression of the late 20s. So it was obviously a rough ride. How was it when you're seeing unemployment figures come out in the way that they did, growth figures? Do you feel sometimes, because you're a conscientious politician and you like to succeed, you like to deliver, when you see unemployment numbers rising, when you see manufacturing slipping, did you get a sinking feeling? How was it living through that period during COVID when the bottom's literally been knocked off the Indian economy?
Well, I think it was a challenge for the entire country. Businesses, households, young and old were all affected by it. So it's not just me. In fact, I was only hearing and acting in order to lessen the burden. I don't know if it was sufficient, but we tried lessening the burden. And therefore, at that time, what constantly stood out for me was the way in which people were responding, with the way in which people were telling the government, would you do this, would you do that? And we tried as much as possible keep responding to those calls. So that itself was motivation enough for us to work, and I would definitely not miss this opportunity to say the Prime Minister was engaging at every level with chief ministers, with ministers, with industry leaders, with common citizens, and the inputs which were coming were all giving us very clear indication of where action should be, and that itself kept us motivated to say, right, people are not, even in spite of the suffering, not losing hope, and they're coming saying, with suggestions. So I drew a lot of inspiration from that, and credit goes to the people of India who were literally facing the challenge and living through it, and I'm very thankful for that.
You didn't answer the bit about the comparison between being Raksha Mantri and Vitt Mantri. The Finance Minister has more pulls and pressures than virtually any other job in the country. Was it more fun being Defence Minister? Is it more enjoyable to be Finance Minister? Which one, if you had a choice, which would you pick? Or are there moments when you're Finance Minister when you're just tearing your hair apart and saying, this is too high pressure a job?
No. I think each one of them had its own charm and challenge. And I enjoyed the charm and challenge there, and I enjoy is not the right word. Both the challenge and the charm has kept me going, and I'm immensely thankful to the Prime Minister for having given that kind of a responsibility and guided me throughout this exercise and even now. So I only wish that I can serve the people of India with all sincerity under the guidance of the Prime Minister.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, for joining us at the India Today Conclave South. Thank you very much. We've had a very frank, engaging conversation, lots of new insights about how you're thinking, how the Finance Ministry is thinking. Deeply appreciate you having taken out time to join us at the India Today Conclave South. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman.
Rahul, எனக்கு இந்த வாய்ப்பு கொடுத்ததுக்கு ரொம்பவே நன்றி. முழு இன்டர்வியூவை தமிழில் பண்ணணும். நீங்கள் நெக்ஸ்ட் டைம் எனக்கு அந்த வாய்ப்பு கொடுங்க. நீங்கள் இங்கிலீஷில் கேளுங்க, நான் பதில் தமிழில் கொடுக்குறேன்.
She's saying that she wants the opportunity to speak in Tamil in Chennai.
We did that with the Chief Minister.
Yes.
He was here, your alliance partner, we were listening to him, but you ask her a question in
Ma'am,
Tamil.
next time kandipa Tamil la
No,
pannu.
no, you ask her a question. Now, Akshita, you ask her a question in Tamil.
Okay, ma'am, Nirmala Sitharaman ma'am, உங்களுக்கு நீங்க என்ன நினைக்கிறீங்க? பிஜேபிக்கு என்ன சான்ஸ் இருக்கு தமிழ்நாடுல இந்த வாட்டி எவ்வளவு சீட்?
பிஜேபி और தோழமை கட்சிகளுக்கு நல்ல வாய்ப்பு இருக்கு. மக்கள் வெளியில வந்து நல்லபடியா அந்த சமயத்துக்கு ஓட்டு அளிச்சாங்கன்னா பிரதமர் ஐயா பண்ற நல்ல ஒரு மக்கள் ஆதரவு உடன் அவர் செய்யக்கூடிய அந்த சேவை தமிழ்நாட்டுக்கும் கிடைக்கிற அளவுக்கு எங்க தோழமை கட்சியோட எங்களுக்கு ஒரு வாய்ப்பு அளிக்கணும் நான் வேண்டி கேட்டுக்கிறேன் தமிழக ஓட்டர் அனைவரையும்.
மிக நன்றி நிர்மலா மேம். ரவுண்ட் ஆஃப் அப்ளாஸ் ப்ளீஸ்.
தமிழ்நாட்டுக்கு நல்ல வாய்ப்பு கொடுக்கறதுக்கான வாய்ப்பு இருக்கு.
Sorry, thank you so much. So she's saying good chance for the BJP. She believes they will do very, very well in the state of Tamil Nadu. She's also put out an appeal to all the voters saying choose the BJP this time.
Well,
BJP
we
along
thank you
with
very
its
much.
alliance
We leave it to the
partners.
voters of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Puducherry to decide. Thank you very much, Finance Minister, for joining us. Thank you, ma'am.